In the last video, we grabbed the character count of the reference blog post that we have as part of this content type. Now let's look into saving this data to the entry, as well as displaying it in multiple locations. In our case, we'll put this information into the sidebar as well to show how the SDK can grab data between different locations. In the code, we originally set the character count of the title's length to match the React state so we could render this in our note component using the character count variable. Here, I'm using the SDK and accessing the field and setting the value of the field, which we're going to set as a JSon object because this field is a JSon field. While setting the value of the field doesn't change the way our app renders that value, we can make an API call to see that the meta field inside of our content type does indeed include the new character count value. To test that our change actually works correctly, let's change the JSON property from char count to word count just to see that we actually are saving data into Contentful. I'm going to take our previously set value and change the property to say word count instead. Again, since we're saving data to a JSON field, we know that this information is custom to what we save to the JSON object. Back in the UI, we can see that the last save was just a few seconds ago because we updated our app. And looking again at the API call, it looks like we were able to successfully change our property inside our meta JSON field. This is how we set values using the SDK inside of an app so we can access those values when we query the API. This will also be helpful when we start our sidebar component, as we'll want to grab the value from this metadata field and use our word count value inside of our sidebar as well. To enable a sidebar app, I'm going to go back into my content model, click on my metadata content type, and go into the sidebar settings. As we can see, my app shows up as an available item in the sidebar, and again, this is because we enabled this in the app definition when we initially created the app. I'm going to go ahead and add my app to the sidebar and save these changes. Navigating back to the metadata, we can see that we have a hello world again for the sidebar app. Let's go ahead and recreate the character count field, but this time in the sidebar to show how we can grab different information from multiple locations using the SDK. Opening up my directory view, I'm going to go back into the components directory and select the sidebar component, which is already created for me using the Create Contentful app CLI tool. In here, we can see that I've already got a custom hello world render, which we're going to change again to a note that's going to have our character count. Let's do that now. Again, I'm going to hardcode 0 to start off with, but we're going to use the SDK to get this actual value. In the UI, we can see that we're starting to mimic the same meta field that we have for our character count in the sidebar. Now we just need to grab the information for that character count using the SDK. Here, again, I'm going to implement a useEffect method as well as start the auto resizer that comes with the SDK. This will again ensure that our UI is properly sized to fit the screen. Next, I'm going to add some React state that will allow us to keep the character count. This is very similar to the way I've done it for the meta field, but now we're simply in the sidebar. Next, I'm going to add in a variable to get our meta value using the SDK again. Here I'm accessing props.sdk.entry.fields, and in our meta field, I want to grab the value for that field. Next, I'm going to set that value using the setter we created on line 11, setCharCount, to include the meta value of the word count. Again, I need to access the word count property because that's what we changed it to in the JSon field when we were editing our code. Lastly, I'm going to simply update our render method to remove the hard-coded 0 in favor of having a character count, which is coming from our React state. In the UI, we can see that our updates have been made, and our character count in the sidebar now reflects the same character count that we have in the meta field. This is again how to grab information from multiple locations using the same exact app source code. Again, here we have an app that not only takes over a field, such as the meta field here, but it also renders a sidebar component. And the app can render both things at the same time without having to build two separate apps. This can be a very powerful solution for apps that need to access data between different locations and display that data to users in a succinct way.